levels of physical inactivity, an increase in the prevalence of non-communicable diseases such as obesity and hypertension, and a decline in school sport participation and high-level sport performers are the themes driving the focus of research at PhASRec. The research focus area of physical activity, sport and recreation was founded in 2009 and strives to be an internationally recognized research entity in human movement science across the lifespan that engage in scholarship with social responsiveness and an ethic of care. Our slogan is, "Active living starts here." PhASRec is a dynamic, multicultural research entity with expertise in the fields of motor control and development, exercise physiology, sport and exercise sciences, health promotion, prevention and rehabilitation of chronic diseases and orthopedics, recreation management and programming, therapeutic recreation, physical activity, obesity, and body composition. The research is structured within 3 research sub-programs, namely physical activity, sports science, and recreation. The physical activity program focuses research on the body composition, physical and motor abilities of young children, adolescents, and older adults in order to prevent and reduce risk factors for non-communicable diseases. The research from the sports science program focuses on performance and psychological indicators of training and matches demands in various sporting codes, as well as heart rate variability and strategic recovery related to optimal performance. New technologies implemented is the use of eye tracking and kinematic and kinetic variables in health and sports settings. The recreation program conducts research in the recreation needs of students, persons with disabilities, and how to effectively prepare and manage recreation intervention programs.
Good day and welcome to our very first virtual open day at the Research Focus Area for Physical Activity, Sport and Recreation. We are really so glad to have you with us today and hope that the video that you just watched gave you a very good overview of what you can expect to encounter when you study a postgraduate qualification with us at PhASRec. Today we would like to give you a little bit of opportunity to engage with some of the researchers that have research projects that you can maybe start your postgraduate studies with. I think I'm speaking to the converted because you that are joining us today have registered and are therefore anticipating to follow a postgraduate qualification. But why do you think it's important? In my view, if you follow a postgraduate qualification, you will not only learn at a more in-depth level about your subject area, but you will also learn new skills. You will learn to persevere, to be patient, to get along with different personalities. You will do group work, you will work in research teams, and all of these skills will only contribute to your future career. You will also be able to acquire skills on how to discern between real evidence in research and what is hoax or false evidence, which is going around a lot in these days. So you will learn to distinguish what are the real evidence base on which you can build your career and your profession going forward. I think most of the information for today you were able to see by visiting our website, by viewing the videos that were uploaded up front. Today, it's actually the opportunity for you to be able to engage with some of the researchers that have research projects and ask them the questions that you would really like to ask face to face. So I'm going to introduce you to the researchers who have projects that are currently listed on our website. You will see on the website there's a 150-word about description of each of the research projects. But to put a face to the researchers who have initiated and conceptualized these projects, we will introduce them to you now. And after this general introduction, there will be a time for questions and answers. So please use the chat box or raise your hand and you will be able to ask the questions to the relevant researchers. After that, We will give an explanation on the application process. We will also share with you the bursaries and the study fees that pertain to these qualifications as a master's in health sciences with human movement science or recreation science, or your doctoral, your PhD in health sciences with human movement science or recreation science. So I'm going to give over to my colleagues, and we will start off with Dr. Christopher Bischoff.
Morning, guys. I hope you all have read through the first big project. I myself am quite excited about that. I do think that this project is a good way of solidifying all the skills that you learn in exercise physiology, human movement science. I do think as well, if you start from set from project, that you'll learn a lot of current skills that are being applied all over the world into the world of sports science, GPS technology, modern variability, modern measures overall, and a lot of exercise physiology principles that you had to come across when studying your undergrad. So I hope you enjoy it.
Good morning, guys. I'm Professor Danae and my field of expertise are kinderkinetics. So we work with the development of children from 0 to 13 years. Early child development, intervention programs, visual stimulation, sports vision, learning disabilities. So I'm the principal investigator for the PhASRec project, and in this project we are trying to establish a research tool or a measurement tool to evaluate the motor skills and physical fitness skills of learners in low resource communities. As you all know, in South Africa, we do not have norms and standards for our population, so that's one of the main objects of this project that we're going to do. We're also going to look at the children's perceived versus motor competence, and we're also going to look at how physical fit they are. Yeah. So there's a lot of information that we're going to gather in this project. So if you are interested in working in the field with children, we're going to focus on 6 to 12-year-olds. We're going to look at high and low socioeconomic status, motor development. So if you are interested in that, please contact me for more information. Looking forward to hear from you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Mark Kramer. My area of expertise is in exercise physiology and in biomechanics. I'm a project leader for 3 specific projects that spans quite a broad range, ranging from sports science all the way through to clinical practice. The first project is related to cardiovascular disease research, and that's quite a big problem in the world at the moment, let alone in South Africa. So to look at various interventions that are effective in mitigating the risks for that particular population group. I'm also the study leader for the visual rehabilitation study. That's looking at specific differences between patients and clinicians to look at what their observational strategies are in order to more effectively mitigate rehabilitation, as well as looking at the differences between experts and novice clinicians in terms of what their visual search strategies are. The final project that I'm responsible for is called the power band study. So that's a way of trying to increase strength and hypertrophy in population groups that have low access or low resources to strength training equipment. And so we want to look at how can we use those types of technologies in order to target specific population groups. Again, we can look at clinical population groups as well as sports science groups. So looking at applying these types of research strategies to various types of sporting codes such as rugby, hockey, soccer, so on and so forth. If you're interested in any one of these projects, please just contact me on the email addresses that were provided in one of the videos. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Christopher Bischoff, and my field of research is digital health. And as you know, that as the country and the world is progressing in terms of digital technologies, we also have to look at digital health in the field of physical activity and rehabilitation. Other than that, public health is a big area where digital health can really help us to reach more people and to get the knowledge across at a level where people can have access to it without all the barriers that they usually face.
Yes.
Good morning, colleagues. I am now Dr. Adele Brunendrijk. I am a sports scientist at the university, and my field of expertise is in exercise physiology, with more specifically looking and going into recovery. So that is where the study comes in, the IMPRESSed study, where we would like to look at the internal and external factors that's linking to recovery. And recovery is such an ongoing process for the elite sports people, with new technology and new techniques coming forth every year or so. So we want to see all these new techniques and technology. How good are they? How functional are they? And how easy to use in the practice are they? So not only in the physiological domain, but we were also looking into the psychological domain for various recovery techniques. So if you are interested in recovery, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Prof. Martinique Sparks. I am a sports scientist by profession, and my keen research interest is within performance analysis, and specifically GPSs. I've been working with GPSs for the past almost 8 years now, and I had the privilege of working with our national women's hockey team for a few years as well. So I'm the principal investigator of the hockey project, and all of the data was already collected through a few international tournaments. We had training camps, we had several overseas-based training camps, and locally we had men, we had women, we had club level, we had national players. So if you are interested in performance analysis, not only GPS but also in video work, I'm looking forward to meeting you, and I hope that you would enjoy the project with me.
I'm Dr. Barry Harber, the principal investigator of the GROW infant study. My field of interest is infant and childhood development. Within the specific study, because the first 1,000 days of a child or infant is seen as a unique window of opportunity with a lot of influences on their development, we will focus on 3 main aspects. That will be growth, physical activity, and their milestone development. And more specifically, we will be looking at what is the influence of growth and physical activity on the milestone development of infants from low and high socioeconomic areas. So if you're interested in this study, please make contact with me. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much from my side as well. Welcome to the PhASRec Virtual Open Day. My name is Dr. Henriette Hamel. I'm a biokineticist by profession. My research background and interest revolves around orthopedics, biomechanics, sports, rehabilitation. Currently, I'm involved in the school bag project, and I'm also the PI for the netball project. If you are interested, please contact the PhASRec office, and you may also contact me on the details provided. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Marianne van Aswegen. I'm also a registered biokineticist with private practice experience, and I have a background in pediatric biomechanics for my PhD. I have decided to initiate a new project in the direction of exercise oncology, and I have a view to establish an exercise oncology center here at PhASRec with both a service delivery and a research facility side to it. I hope that we can investigate the general health benefits of exercise oncology in patients, both those who are undergoing chemotherapy or radiotherapy for their treatment, and also those who have finished with their treatment. I'm hoping to focus on the lymphoma patients because I feel that they have not been investigated as much. And then lastly, to combine my passion for biomechanics with this passion is to look at the different exercise modalities and which would best contribute to improving gait in those who struggle with neuropathies due to their treatment. So if you're interested in exercise oncology and have a feel for biomechanics as well, please contact me. I really look forward to meeting you. Thanks.
Good morning, students or former students.
Happy to meet you via this medium. I'm Dr. Mariette Swanepoel. I'm also a biokineticist, and my area of focus is basically wellness, health, and health promotion. So for the project, the proposed project of 2021, I will be looking at student wellness and health, and we will be evaluating students' lifestyle habits, how well they sleep, how well they eat and don't eat, and how active they are. And then from that, we will then design intervention programs and see how that goes, how effective that is. So if you are interested in anything with regards to wellness and health, you're more than welcome to join this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much for presenting your projects. Dear future or potential students, this is just a snapshot of what we have on our menu at PhASRec. Please visit the website. There are some other projects that are also on the website. You can also visit the website. If you go to the section at PhASRec, which says Meet Our Team, you will find that we have several expert researchers that are involved in other projects. And I would like to invite you now to pose your questions. And while you think of nice questions to ask and which researcher you want to engage with, remember that we will potentially upload more projects as they become available or initiated within the next month. So if you don't find something that you're interested in now, please keep visiting the website and you will soon find something that's in your field of interest.
Good morning, everybody. Also from my side, I've listened to all the experts speak on the various topics and the themes of research, and it's really quite broad. I mean, even within the field of physical and recreational sciences, there are so many topics that one would like to engage in or can engage in. How does it work if, say, for instance, I want to do my master's, I want to do a full dissertation. In other words, I need a theme or topic. To what extent do I need to have that topic defined, methodology sorted out, and know exactly what I want to do, or can a prospective student approach you and say, all right, I'm interested in this broad field? How does it work?
So please, yes, that's a very good question. I think a lot of students do have it. Sometimes, I like to do something in this field, but not quite what. Especially if you anticipate to start with a master's degree, then I suggest you identify within our research team somebody, because each one has their expertise on the website. So please look and see who has expertise or publications or previous projects on that specific topic and contact that person. If you can't find a person on our website, you can email me or give me a phone call and I can direct you to that person. Sometimes we have, or mostly we have projects, and if we accept students into a specific project, a lot of the conceptualization specific for master's degrees have been done. So it buys time for the student, because if they register and it takes them a whole year to get a topic, it adds up to the years of academic time. So it's also a way to try and keep the academic engagement to the minimal, but without compromising quality.
And typically a research proposal, what would be the extent of such a research proposal? If by the time you have to submit the research proposal in order to register the title of the study, is it a 30, 50 page thing? Is it a 3-pager, a 1-pager? How does it look?
Okay, so the research proposal is very important, because we cannot start a study before we have the research proposal, which is considered the blueprint. So for the master's degree, it's part of the first 6 to 8 months of your enrollment, developing the proposal. It is about 20 pages with all included.
You said 6 to 8 months.
Yes.
To start off with.
Yes. It depends on how often you work. It's from experience. We have students that have done it in 3 to 4 months, and mostly are full-time students. So if you can enroll full-time, I think there's more benefits, because you get through your studies, you can be more focused. I know in our subject area, most of our students work full-time, so they enroll for part-time postgraduate studies. And time management is something that they really have to negotiate, and family time as well. But it's something that you have to put your mind to and get it done. So yes, it takes about that long. For a PhD, you've already got a master's degree, so you should know how to draft a proposal. So we do our selection. So by the 1st of November, we hope that all the students that applied will know whether they've been accepted or not, and they can actually then start working on their proposal. So the PhD students have to submit their first draft by the end of March of the year, so before they register, so that we know they're on target to finish in time.
It's very important to manage the time available for a master's or doctoral dissertation study, because once you start going into an overrun, it's always uncomfortable because you're always pushed for time, you know. So the initial planning is good. I'll come back to you in a moment, because I know that some of your international students actually study full time, and I want to ask a little bit about that as well. But first, I want to go to Martinique and also to Henriette. If you focus, for instance, on hockey or netball, a very specific field, how do you narrow down the focus? Because it feels as if the focus is already narrowed down. So if you go into a sporting code, are you limited in terms of scope? Are you focusing on coaching, or on which area within a specific code, sporting code?
So for me, my narrowed down field is GPS analysis and performance analysis. So through my research career, I've worked with soccer, I've worked with rugby, I've worked with female hockey, with male hockey. So it's not really sport specific. So I would be very open to working with other team-based sports, but narrowing down in the field of GPS and performance analysis rather than saying it's in a specific sport. So I'm open for other suggestions within team-based sports, certainly on my side.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think I can just add on to Prof. Spark's remark there. They have given a lot of insight as well into the netball project, because it's not necessarily sport specific. It is to a large degree, but from my side, from the biokinetic background, I would rather look at incidents of injuries or occurrence of injuries pre and post season, and investigating how the training load might have an influence on injuries per se. So from a biokinetic point of view, you can have that approach to any type of sport. And that's why, to answer you on that point. So any sport can be taken into account from the background or the area of interest that you've got. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. I mean, again, just the scope is really impressive, because you don't have to narrow it down too much, or it seems as if all the experts are very approachable when it comes to discussing a theme or a topic. Barry, I would also like to ask you, because I think in your field, the empirical component becomes a bit interesting. I mean, obviously, you all are in a science where you have to go out in the field, and there's almost an experimental component to the work that you do. But Barry, in your case, the empirical, or the gathering of data must be a very interesting thing.
Yeah, in our field, it's always interesting in working with children, especially in my case now, it's babies from 6 to 12 months. So it's quite interesting gathering the data. I mean, there's a lot of a wide range of data that you can get from your study. So yeah, it is quite interesting. I think what we are doing quite well now between all our colleagues is we focus on a certain area of specialization specialization and we focus on that. So also my specialization is growth and development. So that's why I only focus on the growth part of childhood development. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Barry. Professor, I'd like to come back to the full-time international students. I know that you've had a few, if you can perhaps share a few of the experiences, how they go about in conducting their studies.
Yes, so we've been fortunate to have international students from the US, China, and Spain. We've also had postdoctoral students from a few international countries. So the way for an international student to apply is that the qualifications have to be accredited, of course, by our national accreditation body, which is called SAQA. So when these students apply, they must first get these qualifications. They get a certificate that will say it's at a level of an NQF9, which is a master's, or an NQF8, which is an honors or a 4-year degree, which allows you to enter into a master's degree at a 9. And we source bursaries for them, so they are allowed to apply for the university's bursaries, but they can also apply for international bursaries. And yes, they are full-time, which allows them to assist completely into the projects. They work as project managers at sometimes in these projects because they are there full-time.
Thank you, Prof. To all those of you who are viewing, kind reminder, if you have a question, please post it. We can see all your questions. So just put the question there, and we have all the experts available here to answer your questions. Whilst we wait, Christo, I think, you know, the idea of ultimate frisbee is a fascinating one. It's not a sport that's well known. And the other day, I actually saw a documentary on it, that it's a sport that's quite taxing. You have to be extremely fit to deal with it. So the sport in itself is interesting. And I suppose we can say the same about academic study into the sport.
Yes, I also found it very interesting to see that ultimate frisbee has progressed into even a professional sport in the US. They have a professional league. Not sure what the payment on that is at this stage, but in terms of the amount of people participating in this sport, is you would not believe the figures. In the US alone, which was primarily based where all of the data comes from at this stage from ultimate frisbee, is 31% only in the last year of social sports. It's the biggest growing sport in the US at this stage. Only in our country, I was very surprised to see that there's about 20 plus clubs. These are that people are actually participating in. We have run one or two pilot studies that I've just gone out and see what the sport actually requires. What is the metabolic demand of the sport? You would be surprised at the meters they're running and at the heart rates that I'm seeing. It's quite an intensive sport. Also, I think you need a high aerobic base still, but the anaerobic component within the sport is truly quite amazing. So when any future students are going to participate in this project, I think you will be surprised when you break down a sport within the scope of this project that we're going to set on out. I don't think you're going to be surprised at what the metabolic demands and what actually the rigors. It's a quite vigorous sport. It's not a beach sport per se only. It's really transcended into a professional sport. So I think you'll be quite. The sports scientist in me is quite intrigued. So yeah, I think it'll be good.
And Krista, on that, I'm fascinated about the idea that the frisbee thing is a sport on its own, but is it possible to work trans sport? I mean, in science we often see a transdisciplinary approach to something, to exploring an idea. But what if we take athletes and we put them in the frisbee environment? Would that sort of thing be able to do from a methodological standpoint?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. When I was talking to some of the players only in the Potchefstroom Social Club, and when I started talking to them, the background of their sporting history there's a lot of sports that come from. Most of the track and field athletes are just playing the sport. They started to play the sport just to increase their fitness before the seasons, athletic season starts. A lot of netball players also do well. I do not know if most everyone knows, but this is mostly played on a social level as a mixed gender sport. So there's a mix of guys and girls playing with each other as well. But the netball players definitely have the better eye. I think they see space a lot more. I haven't seen that much rugby players playing the ultimate frisbee. I do think it'll attract more as sport gains popularity. But definitely a lot of backgrounds, a lot of sports being represented in a ultimate frisbee team. And again, it's going to be interesting to see which sports churn out better ultimate frisbee players as well. Something to look at also. There's a lot of flexibility in this project, I think.
Thank you, Chris, and therefore a lot of flexibility in PhASRec in itself as well. We have a few questions coming through, and Professor, I think this one might be geared towards you. Chantel asks, my undergrad is sport and recreation management. Then I went to the marketing direction, honors and masters and PhD in marketing management. How can Chantel now bridge over to your field again, perhaps for a master's study after, venturing off into another faculty?
Chantal, thank you very much for that question, because I think you open up a space where students coming in from another profession, we look at your academic record. So say, for instance, I'm not sure, does she have a master's already?
She mentioned honors, masters and PhD.
So if you already have a master's in we say a relevant field, so we use people, or we consider people that have other qualifications based on their undergraduate subjects, and we recognize their previous learning experiences. So we will definitely look, if you've got a master's, what topic you were working on, if it is feasible, or you have the background to go into a PhD. And in some circumstances, previously, we've recommended a student to take an additional module where they lacked some background. So just to give them the whole picture to be able to complete their qualifications. So yes, that would be an ad hoc application that we will consider.
I've seen this across the Faculty of Health Sciences at the Noordwes-Universiteit, that research entities, many of them are open for a reach across the traditional borders outlined within their science. They don't really mind, a new theme that has its legs in two fields.
I think the management, because you have recreation and you have the sport, which is either a PhD in recreation or a PhD or a master's in sports science. But if you combine the two, we look at the student's previous qualifications and make a recommendation that it might be a PhD in recreation science, but it can be management, because the recreation students often have a background in commerce, which the sports science students don't have. So I think we look at the whole profile of the applicant.
So we are talking both about the topics and the focus areas of PhASRec, but I've seen so often that postgraduate students want to know a little bit more about the experience. I mean, it's easier for us to imagine the experience of an undergrad student and what they go through. So I'd like to ask Prof. Kutsia, if you don't mind, what are the typical things that you've seen your postgrad students go through, the experiences, the struggles that they have in their studies?
Thank you for that question. I think it depends from student to student, but most of the times it is the frustration to get through the first part with the proposal, and then let's say something like COVID happens and they cannot do data collection. That's also a frustration that some of the students do have. But I think a lot of it is if there is a good relationship between the study leader and the student, then a lot of the frustration and the hiccups will be creased out. So it's very important that the student from the beginning must have a relationship with the study leader, so that we can know what's going on in their lives and they know what's going on in our lives. And then that process will definitely help to smooth it out. But some of the hiccups definitely and frustration is when they start with the proposal part and then right at the end, when they're almost done, there's also a little bit of frustration. But I think mostly you need to work with your study leader. Then a lot of the frustration will be sorted out.
Thank you, Danae.
I'm sure my colleagues will agree with me on that one.
Mariette, I think what Danae said now relates a little bit to the wellness field that you often focus on. What are your experiences when it comes to the journey of the postgraduate student?
Yeah, I have to elaborate on what Danae said. It is students really have to set goals for themselves and stick with that, and then they have to communicate very well with their study leaders, and they have to keep on working even if they do only small amounts of work. A lot of times they get stuck in the bigger picture, but sometimes just cut it into smaller chunks, and manage that, and don't stop working. And if you do have to take a time out, take time out and then completely rest, and then get back into the game as soon as possible. Yeah, so that would be my advice.
Yeah, thanks, Marie. Yeah, I think that relationship with the study supervisors is important, and the study supervisor is usually experienced enough to manage a person through that process. Prof, I'm going to ask a little bit about contact between study leader and the student, how often it relates. I'm also just curious on the, for instance, Krishna, how would you approach, staying in contact with a student? How often in your experience is it necessary to have a conversation, to submit, etc.?
Well, I think in my case it's a little bit more difficult because I'm not in South Africa, and I realized that there was a disconnection problem. So let me just quickly link that up. Is I sit in Finland, so I would mostly be in contact with my students remotely. But we've got Dr. Tamron Feldsman, who's also working on the project with us, and she would be right there, able to have contact with the students and lead them. So the way in which I would usually do is I propose that we have, depending on the phase of your study, have bi-weekly meetings like this, virtual meetings, and then of course through email communication and constant feedback. I work very strictly with deadlines and with calendars, purely because of the fact that I am far away and it's not easy for me to pull a student by his ears, that's a joke, and say, get into my office, we have to talk. So I adhere very sufficiently to timelines, and I ask for students to keep to their timelines, and then I request bi-weekly meetings to keep the progress going. And then, of course, in this situation, we also, if there's a crisis that a student needs to see somebody straight away, we have Tamron there as well. So we would be working together as a team.
Thanks, Chris. Is this your experience as well, Professor?
Yes, it's good to hear the colleagues, we're all on the same page. So within PhASRec, we have the bi-weekly contact with our postgraduate students. So it's an agreement. So when a student enrolls, there's a formal agreement that is signed between the supervisor and the candidate. There's dates that is agreed upon, what activity will be taking place by what date. There's also a expectation sort of document that we complete. So the student completed what is his or her expectations of the road and the journey on certain topics, and the supervisor completes it. And there where they disagree, they know that's communication areas. That's where they have to talk it out. Maybe I think the student should make the appointment, and the student thinks I must make the appointment. So we sort that out at the beginning. And then, of course, we expect our supervisors and students to at least, even if it's hi, I'm okay, every 2 weeks, so that there's a continuation of work going on.
Whilst we're on contact with the student, we've had a question now on should the potential student first register and then make contact with the supervisor, or do you recommend first a discussion with the supervisor?
Yeah, so we ask you, please, if you're interested, just give an email, give a call to the person that you think you want to work with or the project you're interested in, and get some more information on the project to really have a discussion to make sure that this is what you want to do, and then you can apply. And then registration is only next year, so there's an application process. I think maybe I should explain that while we're on the topic. So the way that the process works is once you've applied, you will become part of a group which we will communicate to, and then we will have a selection process. So for the master's qualification, we give you an assignment where we expect you to draft a problem statement from 5 research papers on the topic that we provide you. And then you get assessed on your writing skills and your ability to draft a research question and maybe 2 or 3 hypotheses and objectives. So that's the screening, just to see if the student has the ability to write logically. For people that want to enroll in the PhD qualification, we ask for a reference from the master's supervisor. And of course, we have the master's thesis that we can use. And the outcome of this process is by the 1st of November. So on our website, you will see our application close on the 11th of September. And then we start with this process. So once you know that you've been selected, you can start communicating on your specific topic with your supervisor. You also get allocated the supervisor then. And then registration is only next year. So you can do some work up front.
So we've also had another comment on the allocation and the availability of supervisors. I mean, all the people we've listened to today are potential supervisors.
Yes, yeah.
And the allocation, is that handled, can a student request a specific supervisor?
So like most of the colleagues said, it's important that there's a very good relationship between the supervisor and the candidate. So we try to accommodate candidates with supervisors. But you must remember, if there's 5 people applying for the same project that can only accommodate 1 PhD student, then there will be competition. So the supervisor will select the strongest candidate, which will mean that we might ask you maybe a second choice that you can consider. These projects that you heard about today, some of them can accommodate more than 1 student as well. Some projects can accommodate maybe 2 masters, 1 PhD, or 2 PhD and 1. You will find the allocation on our website. So it is with each project. If you don't mind who you're working with, then we can allocate you to the expert. So we try to link up that you work with the person that you are comfortable with in a project. And there's enough. You've just met 11 of our researchers. We are actually 38 in the entity. So there are more researchers. There are some projects that are not here today, and there might be some new projects coming in. So, yes.
All right. So I want to get back to the focus of PhASRec, you know, the science behind it, and perhaps a bit of a future indication of where your field is heading towards. You know, often people want to talk about cutting edge, and this is the latest trend within the research. So, Prof, I'm going to come to you soon, but I think I want to run to a few of the colleagues that I've not yet approached. Mark, Adele, and Marianne. I think I've not posed a question to you. So from your specific areas, what would you say, what's happening now? What's trending, and what would within your field be the research focus?
I think personally that there's a massive need for the translation of just theory-based research into something that's actually clinically useful and something that has real-world application. And so you can see a lot of trends where researchers are collaborating with either athletes or coaches or clinics to see what some of the needs are in the field, and then try and address the research needs from that perspective. So the real world application side of things, at least from my side, is a massive aspect in terms of how to apply it between theory and research and then the clinical application of that. So the close communication between clinicians and practitioners is a key aspect, I think.
Adele?
Hey, just from my side, just looking at the elite sport level, where it's really getting tough to be able to dominate at an elite level. So training is harder, matches are harder, everything, it's getting a lot tougher. So we want to see how can we help athletes really get to that level, to be at the top elite performance level, and recovery is such an important factor, but it's not such a broad discovered topic because new technologies come out. For instance, the one that we will be looking at is the Normatec pneumatic compression device, which is very nice to travel with, implement in between matches in a single day. So it's very portable, but there's no research about that. So we want to look at on a continuous basis with all the new technologies coming out and appliances coming out. How useful are they really? Because you pay a lot of money for something. So how useful is it for a team or for an individual sport person?
Yes, thank you. I think from an exercise oncology perspective, this is well recognized abroad. Places like Australia have a position statement saying that all of their oncology patients should participate in physical activity. It is actually part of their adjunct therapy. Whereas in South Africa, this is completely lacking, and I feel it is a very important service that is busy being neglected, and that should be addressed and needs to be implemented in South Africa for our cancer patients. So that is what I have to add to new research in the South African context.
Colleagues, I'm going to come back to you after I give the professor the opportunity to speak now on these trends. So within your field, if you have something to share with us, we would really appreciate it. But I suppose the question is a bit more challenging to the research director because of the broad scope. But what have you seen?
Yeah, so this is my 10th year as the director of this research entity. So it's also a time this year to reflect back on what we've done over the last 5 years and where we're going to. So our entity is in the top notch of the country with physical activity and sport and exercise and recreation research. So we're up there. But what I see at a national level is that a lot of research is mostly about observing people and trying to draw associations between certain things, you know. If you're overweight, how much activity are you doing? Or these overweight people are eating so much, you know, these type of associations. So our vision to go forward is to try and focus more on interventions, like Marianne's project, like Mark's projects. They're all interventions where we really, in sport and exercise, you wouldn't believe me how many mechanisms and physiological processes are not clear yet. We don't know how it works. So by doing intervention studies, we can look up to the physiological level. We can measure the mental changes. We can measure the physical changes, even if it's sport or conditioning for an elite athlete, if it's for a recreational person or whatever. So we want to move towards interventions where we can look at cause and effect. That's one thing. But then to join some mechanistic research where we try and understand what's the underlying mechanisms involved in the exercise role that it plays in the changes that we see, because we know it's universally known that exercise is helpful. It's beneficial to your health. If you exercise, you learn more skills, your potential to be a top sportsman is developed. So it's across the lifespan. And then the next thing that we're looking cross professionally or interprofessionally would be to look at the mental aspects joined with the physical aspects. And that is also, it comes into the recovery. I mean, a person can be physically strong to perform well, but if your head is not in the right space.
Yeah, my goodness, that opens up an entire field again.
Yeah, so it's not looking in the silos, but how do we integrate what we find and apply that? And I think our unit is very much focused on applied research, real world situations. You will hear a lot from the colleagues saying, but how does it work in a sport team? What can a sports scientist take from this project and implement? And not just happening in the lab in a controlled situation. So one of your other questions just now was about, the experience of the student. So I would like to ask them to go to our website and look at our equipment. We have state-of-the-art equipment to investigate all of these aspects. We can look at visual eye movement. We can look at neurofunctionality. We can track your movement. We can track your physical activity. It's all mobile equipment. So you're not linked to something that you have to sit in one space, but you can do your usual activities, and we can measure, do some activity measurements while you are in your normal habitat.
The themes and the topics are really complex, but I think once you have the experience, as you would amongst your team of researchers, as to how to approach the complexity of it, to how to ask the right questions and then apply the right methodology to it, and then plus have the world-class facilities available. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful coming together of a good recipe in order to further one's studies. Colleagues, I would like to come to you now. If any of you have something to share with regard to the latest trends within your field, please do so.
I would like to share something that I've noticed living here in Finland is with this whole COVID-19, our therapists have experienced that patients don't actually go and visit the therapists. So the rehabilitation process is not as effective as what it should be. Already the public healthcare system here works a little bit differently. So they're already starting to use more technology into their research, and doing remote rehabilitation sounds very foreign to most of us coming from a South African concept, but it's more and more the trend in Europe that it is a remote access rehabilitation that's taking place, and that's a whole new field of research. And what's also now happening is the integrated care systems that they are developing more and more, where a therapist, doctor, whichever medical professional can actually have access to all the different medical records. And with AI solutions, it gives you an algorithm that predicts more or less the diagnosis or the interplay of comorbidities that actually helps therapists in not only diagnosing the patient, but also prepare a care plan pathway for them. So I think when it comes to what is really happening and what is really new, this is an exciting field of research that I hope in future we will be able to look more into, because it's one thing for the application to work, but like Professor Moss said, for all of that to work in practice, the practical application for biokineticists, kinetics and sports scientists, it is something that we really have to investigate on a practical level. How can it be used, and how can it actually diversify our patient care and maybe improve even our patient care?
Sounds fascinating, Krishna. Anyone else?
Can I maybe come in here? It's Martinique. So I want to concur what Dr. Adele said about the elite performance and how difficult it becomes to really try and enhance someone's performance. If you are looking for 1%, because that's all that it takes to win, is an extra 1%. I get excited by big data sets and looking for where the next 1% will come from. The other side of the coin to that is analysis paralysis. So we're getting to a point now where technology is getting so big, and it's so freely available these days that we really need to look at which things really make a difference. And that's something that really excites me is looking for that next 1% without overanalyzing and overwhelming the coaches and the players, because they can't focus on everything. You need to find the 1% and tell them this is what we're going to focus on.
You know, you're a scientist when you hear or when you utter the sentence, I get excited by big data sets. Something so typically scientific to say. Anyone else, colleagues?
I just might add something. Within the wellness area and health promotion, we are now starting to look at objectively measuring sleep with a small device that you can wear for 2 nights at your home. So, yeah, that's something new, and I think you can use it within the field of all the other colleagues that's working with elite sport persons or anyone that's struggling with chronic diseases. Sleep apnea is the big thing these days. So that's something that's in the area of wellness now, and that is something that will be part of the project for 2021. So it's quite interesting, and it can also be used by doctors as a diagnostic tool.
Thank you, Marie. Anyone else?
I might just add to say that I think our programs are on par with what's happening internationally. I think every single person on this panel is working and collaborating with researchers from other institutes all over the world. So everything from America to UK to Australia and everything like that. And that's something that students would get exposure to as well. So they're not just working in silos with researchers from Noordwes-universiteit, they're also getting exposure to research and collaborations that occur all across the globe. So that's just something worth adding, I think, as well.
Thanks, Mark. That's spot on. Yes. All right, so let's conclude. Professor, you have the floor. Some concluding remarks. I'm sure people have questions about perhaps a bursary or two.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to the team. Now that we're wrapping up, I think you that are tuned in could see how passionate they all are about their research and that they actually know what's going on in our entity. Mark, thanks for flagging our international networks, because we do have quite a number of agreements with exchange programs currently only for staff, but there's potential to expand to postgraduate students as well. So just to give you the news on the financial side, I think that's a question that you're all pressing to ask. You can obtain a quote via the website from the university. So the figures I'm giving you is just an estimate, because the final figures for next year have not been published yet. But for the master's degree in health sciences with human movement sciences or as recreation science, it's in the vicinity of 22,000 Rand per annum. And it's expected that you complete your studies within 2 years. For the PhD, it's in the vicinity of 23,000 Rand per annum, and it's expected that you complete your studies within 3 years. If you take longer than there's allocated time, you incur penalties, of course, and that's usually financial penalties. The upside of this is that our university also offers bursaries to our postgraduate students. So for the master's degree, either human movement science or recreation science, the funding available for 2020 was 40,000 Rand, so that's nearly double your tuition fees, and that's available for 2 years. So you can get it for both years. If you register as a part-time student, you get half of that amount. For the PhD, your bursary is about 60,000 Rand per annum for 3 years. And if you are a part-time student, it will be 30,000 Rand per annum for the 3 years. I think that's good news that we can end off with.
Very good. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. We are available. If you would like to contact us and ask a few more questions, you're more than welcome to do so. You have our details. And to all the experts, we know that you're very busy. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us. And Professor, thank you to you too. Really appreciate your presence here today.
Thank you, Harber, for facilitating our session. I think we all need to stand up now, sitting for 1 hour, and we're looking forward to your applications.